The Deep Space Survey team had been traveling for months when the strange signal first appeared on their long-range scanners. At first, it looked like static, the usual noise that drifted across the empty paths between stars. But the pattern didn't fade. Instead, it grew stronger, repeating in a rhythm that made no sense for natural space noise. The lead analyst leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the filters again and again, but the result was always the same. Something intelligent was sending signals. The team was part of a coalition made of several alien worlds, each one proud of its technology and convinced that the galaxy had few surprises left. They had cataloged hundreds of planets, watched new civilizations rise and fall, and even guided some young species from a distance. Because of this long history, they believed they could predict almost any new life they found. But this signal confused them not. It came from a blue-white star system in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a place so ordinary that survey teams rarely bothered to look twice. Yet the waves of energy coming from that direction had layers, like messages wrapped inside more messages. The team sent the data to the Central Council, expecting either excitement or alarm. Instead, they received a simple, urgent instruction: investigate immediately. Their ship changed course and sped toward the distant star. The closer they got, the stranger the readings became. The signals were not just messages. They were bursts of sound, pictures, moving scenes, music, and voices speaking in hundreds of different patterns. No civilized world they had ever seen produced so many signals at once. And no developing species should have been able to broadcast across space at such strength. The Council called the unknown species potentially formidable. It was a label they rarely used. It meant the species might be dangerous, powerful, or unpredictable. It also meant that caution was required. By the time the survey team arrived near the blue-white star, every member felt the weight of the mission. Their screens lit up with thousands of transmissions from the small, bright planet below. Some looked like celebrations. Some looked like arguments. Some were quiet and peaceful. Others were chaotic and filled with emotion. The aliens had never seen such a loud world. They began scanning the planet from orbit, expecting to find a single strong government or a unified network controlling all communication. Instead, they found many groups, many languages, many cultures. This was rare. Most advanced species became united long before they started reaching out into deep space. But here, the people seemed to disagree about almost everything, yet they thrived. The first physical scan of the humans surprised the team even more. Compared to many creatures in the galaxy, the humans were physically fragile. Their bones could break easily, their skin could be cut, and their bodies could not survive extreme cold or heat for long. Some species in the coalition could survive vacuum for minutes, or walk through fire, or regenerate lost limbs. Humans had none of those abilities. In fact, humans were so physically weak that one of the analysts wondered if the Council had made an error in labeling them formidable. But then they scanned deeper. Inside the human brain, they found unusual activity, strong emotional storms, fast decision-making, patterns that changed so quickly they were almost impossible to track. Because of this, the analysts could not predict human behavior with their normal mathematical models. For most alien species, future actions could be calculated with accuracy. But with humans, the predictions broke apart after only a few seconds. The models kept flashing warnings: unstable, uncertain, unpredictable. No species had ever broken their prediction system before. The team finally understood why the Council wanted a closer look. A meeting was called on the ship. Representatives from each species in the coalition took their seats around a circular table. The leader of the mission explained the situation. They had found a species that should have been weak, but somehow broadcast signals across space. using technology that looked chaotic yet worked impressively well. They lived in climates that should be dangerous for them. They survived disasters that should have ended their species long ago. And they did all this while constantly disagreeing with one another. After a long discussion, the group agreed on one thing. This world required a direct visit, but landing on a planet full of emotional, unpredictable creatures could be dangerous. The aliens decided to travel with heavy safety protocols. They prepared shields, disguise systems, emergency medical gear, and language translators. The team members trained on how to remain calm if humans reacted violently or fearfully. Everything was planned carefully. Yet even with all these preparations, no one truly knew what to expect. When their ship finally drifted through the blue atmosphere of the planet, the team felt a mix of curiosity and tension. The craft was designed to be non-threatening, with soft lights and slow movements. It lowered itself onto an open field outside a large human city. The area had been chosen because it was far from crowds, quiet, and easier to control. But something happened that none of them planned for. Humans noticed the ship immediately. Instead of running away in fear, people rushed toward it. Some pointed. Some shouted. Some recorded videos. Some simply stared with wide eyes. A few were excited. A few were nervous. But almost none were afraid. This shocked the delegation. On most planets, first contact triggered panic. Some species fainted. Others hid. A few even attacked out of terror. But humans acted like they had been waiting for something interesting to happen. And this was finally it. The aliens paused inside the ship, watching the crowds gather. One member of the team whispered that the humans seemed strangely comfortable with danger. Another wondered why they would walk towards something unknown instead of keeping distance. A third asked why so many humans looked amused. After several minutes of debate, the team decided to open the hatch. The door slowly lowered, letting out a soft breath of air and light. The crowd stepped back a little, not out of fear, but to get a better view. The aliens walked out carefully, expecting screams or panic. Instead, they were met with curious eyes. One human raised a hand in a friendly greeting. Another laughed softly, as if this moment was more unbelievable than frightening. A child pointed at the aliens and asked a question no one on the ship could understand. Someone else waved a small flag, not in warning but excitement. The translator drone floated forward and began speaking in the human language, explaining that the visitors came in peace. The humans listened, some nodding, some recording, some whispering to each other. The first contact, which the aliens thought would be dangerous, felt strangely calm. The delegation exchanged glances. This was not what they expected. They had prepared for a powerful, threatening species. Instead, they found a physically weak but unbelievably bold race that did not fear them. Their simple greetings seemed to reveal more about humans than any scan or report. Humans were curious. Humans were fearless. Humans stepped toward the unknown instead of away from it. The team realized that the most interesting part of the mission had only just begun. When the alien delegation finally stepped onto the surface of Earth, they expected the humans to react with confusion or fear. Instead, the people simply stood there, staring back with open curiosity. Some whispered to each other. Some pointed at the strange shapes and colors of the alien team. A few lifted their devices and recorded everything. As if this moment was part of a normal day, the aliens tried to stay calm. Though every one of them felt the same uneasy thought, this species was not behaving the way any first contact species should. Humans were supposed to be frightened. They were supposed to step back and allow the visitors to take control. But humans acted as if they were meeting travelers, not unknown beings from another world. The translator drone hovered between the two groups, repeating gentle greetings in the human language. At first there was silence. Then one human stepped closer, not rushing, just walking slowly, checking if the aliens reacted. When the aliens did nothing, others followed. In minutes, the distance between both groups nearly disappeared. One of the alien representatives observed the humans carefully. Their faces carried emotions so openly that the aliens could read them even without understanding the details. There was excitement, curiosity, and even friendliness. A few humans seemed nervous, but their fear was small and controlled. It was not the fear of danger. It was the fear someone feels when facing something new. The aliens looked at each other. They had prepared for angry crowds, armed guards, or cautious leaders. Instead, they were met with people who wanted to know who they were, where they came from, and why they had arrived. Their behavior made no logical sense, according to the models the aliens relied on. Humans should have been scared, but they weren't. One of the humans made a gesture that the translators quickly identified as a greeting. The alien representative copied the gesture, raising a limb slowly so it would not be mistaken for aggression. When the crowd saw this, a kind of warm laughter spread through them. Not mocking laughter, but the kind people use when something unexpected but pleasant happens. It surprised the aliens even more. As the first few minutes passed, the aliens noticed other unusual things. Human clothes were all different. Bright colors, dull colors, patterns, simple fabric, complex designs. On every other world the delegation had visited, people dressed almost the same, especially during official gatherings. But humans seemed comfortable expressing themselves. Even their hair varied in shapes and styles. Some humans covered their heads. Some tied their hair. Some let it fall freely. Others had shaved it entirely. This kind of variety was not just uncommon, it was unheard of. The aliens took notes quickly, sending details back to the ship. The data confused the automated prediction systems just as much as earlier scans had. Every new piece of information about humans only made them more unpredictable. A small group of humans stepped forward and spoke to the translator. The words came fast, filled with emotion. The translator struggled, adjusting its systems again and again to keep up. Human speech wasn't only about sound. It carried meaning through tone, expression, and movement. The translator noted that even when two humans spoke the same language, their style could be completely different. No alien species had ever shown this level of communication complexity. After some time, the crowd shifted. More humans arrived, walking from nearby buildings and roads. Some brought children who stared wide-eyed at the visitors. A few maintained a respectful distance, but none behaved aggressively. None tried to control or push the aliens back. It was as if humans wanted to show that they were ready to communicate. The delegation began walking among the crowd, slow and careful. A thin line formed naturally around them as humans gave space without being told. Some asked questions. Some simply watched. The aliens observed that humans could switch emotions quickly. A person who was excited one moment could suddenly become calm or thoughtful. This emotional flexibility was another surprise to the delegation. Most species' emotional states were steady and predictable. Humans were different. Their emotions came in waves, rising and falling within seconds. As they moved, the aliens noticed something else. Humans helped each other constantly. Someone tripped on uneven ground, and 3 people rushed forward to help before the aliens even understood what happened. A child became frightened by one of the alien devices, and a nearby adult immediately comforted them. Even though they were surrounded by unknown beings, humans still looked after one another. The aliens took note of this behavior. It revealed something important about human nature. Cooperation came naturally to them, even in unusual situations. One of the representatives watched as a human tried to hand them a small bottle of water. The gesture confused the representative at first. Was it a test? A gift? A sign of trust? The humans smiled softly and motioned that it was safe. When the alien finally accepted the bottle, the humans around them reacted with approval, as if a small barrier had been crossed. This simple act touched the delegation more than they expected. On many worlds, first contact involved long negotiations before even the smallest items were exchanged. But humans shared without hesitation. It was another sign of their boldness, their lack of fear. After some time, the translators began giving detailed explanations of why the delegation had arrived. Humans listened closely. Their reactions were honest and unfiltered. They asked questions no other species had ever asked so early in a first contact meeting. They wanted to know if the aliens were safe, if they needed anything, if they had met other worlds, if humans could learn from them, and even if they liked Earth's atmosphere. Their questions carried humor, something the alien team had not prepared for. Humor was rare in the galaxy. Only 2 known species used it regularly, and even then, it was simple and predictable. But humans spoke with humor that changed from person to person. Some jokes were light, some were sharp, some were silly, and some felt like hidden tests to see how the aliens would react. The aliens tried to understand. Some jokes went over their heads, but when they finally understood one, they found themselves trying to mimic human laughter. It came out awkward and stiff, causing the humans to laugh even more warmly. No one felt insulted. Instead, the moment made the connection between both groups stronger. As the day passed, the aliens collected more data. They learned that the humans had many cultures, many beliefs, many styles of living. They learned that humans could disagree with each other and still stand side by side when facing something unknown. They learned that humans had a long history filled with challenges, mistakes, achievements, and discoveries. They had survived storms, diseases, and conflicts. And somehow, through all of it, they had continued moving forward. The aliens found this strange. Any other species with such fragile bodies would have vanished long ago. Humans should have struggled to survive. Yet they thrived. They built cities, created art, explored oceans, and now looked up at the sky with confidence instead of fear. Near sunset, the delegation prepared to return to their ship. They expected the humans to step back or keep a respectful distance. Instead, they stayed close, watching the aliens carefully, almost warmly. Some waved, some smiled. A few recorded until the very last moment. Even as the ship lifted off, humans remained on the ground, looking upward. The aliens watched them from the windows, trying to understand what made this species so different. They were weak, yet strong, reckless, yet caring, emotional, yet brave. Humans were a collection of contradictions, and that was what made them difficult to predict. As the ship rose into the sky, one thought settled in the minds of the entire delegation. They had come expecting a primitive species. Instead, they had found a deeply complex one, maybe even more complex than any they had ever encountered. They realized their reports would need to be rewritten from the beginning. The alien delegation returned to their ship after the first day on Earth, with their minds full of questions. Everything they had expected about humans had already been proven wrong. They had prepared for fear, panic, or confusion. Instead, they found excitement, curiosity, and an almost casual approach toward meeting beings from another world. It was the kind of reaction the delegation had never faced before. When the ship door closed and the engines hummed softly, the group sat in silence, trying to understand what they had just experienced. Each member of the team reviewed their recordings. They watched humans laughing, waving, stepping closer instead of staying away. They saw children reaching out with wonder instead of fear. They saw adults acting like they were welcoming visitors, not defending against a threat. The more they watched, the more confused they became. The ship's internal lights dimmed slightly as then Analysis systems began to process all the collected data, but even the advanced computers struggled. Human actions did not match any of the behavior patterns in the galactic prediction library. The system tried again and again, adjusting its models, but every attempt failed. The data was too inconsistent. Humans changed their emotional tone too quickly. They mixed seriousness with humor, caution with boldness, and doubt with trust all within seconds. One of the alien analysts finally said something that many of them had been thinking. They needed to observe humans up close, not from the ship's systems. Scans and numbers could not explain this species. The delegation agreed. They would spend more time on the planet the next day, but in a different way. They wanted to see humans in their natural surroundings, not gathered in a crowd, not excited by a spaceship, but simply living their everyday lives. The next morning, the ship descended again, but this time to a quieter area. It was a small town on the edge of a larger city and area where people walked to work, families prepared for their day, and life moved at a slower pace. When the aliens stepped out, there were no crowds waiting. Instead, a few humans were walking along the sidewalk. Some glanced at the ship, surprised but not terrified. A few even waved politely, as if the aliens were visitors checking into a hotel. The delegation walked toward the town. Humans gave them space, but didn't run away. Someone riding a bicycle slowed down, but didn't fall or swerve. Another human holding morning coffee stopped for a moment, looked at them, and then continued walking, mumbling something about needing to get to work on time. The aliens looked at each other. It was almost unbelievable. Humans treated them like something interesting, not something dangerous. As they moved deeper into the town, the aliens started observing human behavior more closely. They saw people opening shops, unlocking doors, sweeping floors, arranging goods. They saw children heading to school, some walking slowly, some rushing, some talking happily. They watched as a group of neighbors gathered by a small shop just to chat. They laughed, argued, teased each other lightly, and then went on with their day, as if everything was normal. What surprised the aliens most was how humans expressed emotions openly. If someone was tired, it showed on their face. If someone was excited, their voice changed. If they were irritated, their body language shifted. Humans didn't hide what they felt. This transparency was unusual in the galaxy. Most species learn to mask emotions early due to cultural rules or natural caution. But humans allowed their emotions to appear freely and didn't seem ashamed of it. A few minutes later, something unexpected happened. A human carrying several bags tripped on uneven pavement. Before the aliens could react, 3 people rushed forward to help. They picked up the bags, asked if the person was okay, and offered support. The aliens watched closely. This response was familiar. They had seen something similar the previous day. Humans were quick to help one another, not out of obligation or fear, but out of instinct. The delegation noted this behavior carefully. Many alien species were cooperative, but their cooperation was usually based on rules, not emotion. Humans helped because they cared. They acted before thinking. This type of reaction was rare in the galaxy. They continued walking and soon came across a park. There were older people sitting on benches, enjoying the morning. There were children playing games, shouting in excitement, but without any real danger. There were adults jogging, walking dogs, exercising, or simply enjoying the fresh air. Everything looked peaceful, but there was also a feeling of constant motion. Humans didn't like staying still. They always needed to move, talk, create, or explore. The aliens stood by a fountain, watching the scene. They felt something they couldn't describe. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was more like admiration mixed with disbelief. How could a species so physically fragile behave with such energy and confidence? One human approached them slowly, carrying a sketchbook. They smiled politely and asked if they could draw the aliens. The delegation exchanged confused glances. No one had ever asked to draw them before. After a moment of silent debate, they agreed. The humans sat down and started sketching with quick, careful strokes. The aliens watched with curiosity. They had scanned human art during the night, but seeing it created in front of them was different. Humans captured emotion in their art, not just shape. This amazed the delegation. Soon, others came to see the drawing. Some whispered. Some praised the sketch. Some asked questions about the aliens. No one acted aggressive or defensive. It was as if humans were meeting foreign travelers at a marketplace, not beings from beyond the stars. The aliens noticed something else. Humans were naturally social. They shared stories, asked about each other's lives, and expressed interest in everything new. They didn't isolate themselves out of fear. They wanted connection. The delegation decided to walk farther into the city. As they approached a busy street, they saw vehicles moving in organized lines, people crossing roads, traffic signals blinking. Everything looked noisy and chaotic, yet it worked. Humans lived in noise and motion comfortably. The delegation had only seen such active environments on one other planet in their journey. And even that world could not match the sheer energy of human cities. At a nearby cafe, people sat outside drinking warm beverages. When the aliens passed by, some looked up in surprise, but many simply nodded in greeting, as if this was normal. One person lifted their cup slightly, a small friendly gesture that the translator recognized as a greeting. The aliens tried to copy the gesture, lifting one of their own instruments awkwardly. The humans laughed gently, not in a mean way, but in a way that made the aliens feel welcomed. The delegation sat at an empty table, unsure what to do. The cafe owner approached them with caution, but no fear. They offered water, pointing to the glasses. The aliens accepted. The owner didn't charge them anything, simply smiling and stepping back. This moment fascinated the team. The owner didn't know who they were or what they wanted. But humans had a habit of offering hospitality, even when they didn't fully understand the situation. This trait was incredibly rare in the galaxy. As they drank the water, the aliens listened to the sounds around them. Conversations mixed together. Some people discussed their plans for the day. Others talked about their families. A few chatted about the aliens themselves, guessing where they might be from. Some humans were convinced the visitors came in peace. Others believed they came to learn. But almost no one believed they came to harm. This level of trust was shocking to the delegation. Humans trusted easily, not blindly, but naturally. They approached life with expectation, not fear. Later in the afternoon, the delegation walked toward a large open area near the city center. A group of young humans played a team sport there. They ran, shouted, laughed, competed, fell, got up again, and continued without hesitation. The aliens watched closely. Even when humans fell or collided, they got back up quickly, brushing off the pain as if it were nothing. Their bodies were fragile, yet their spirit was unbreakable. One of the aliens whispered something quietly, but the translator caught it. They said humans lived as if nothing could stop them. Their strength wasn't physical. It came from inside. It came from something the delegation couldn't fully understand yet. As evening approached, the aliens prepared to return to their ship. But before they left, some humans approached them again, offering small tokens, flowers, drawings, simple handmade crafts. They weren't gifts of value. They were gifts of kindness. The delegation had never received this from any species during a first contact mission. The aliens held the items carefully, unsure how to express their appreciation. The humans simply smiled, as if saying no thanks was needed. When the ship took off that night, the delegation looked down at the world below. The lights of human cities glowed like stars on the surface. The streets were alive. People were still awake, still moving, still living with energy and emotion. The team realized a simple truth. Humanity was not dangerous because of their strength. They were dangerous because of their spirit. And that spirit was something no scan or prediction could ever measure. They returned to the ship knowing their mission had changed completely. The alien delegation returned to Earth for the 4th day of observation. They felt more prepared, but also more unsure than ever. Every new thing they had learned about humans only created more questions. Their systems could not predict human behavior. Their emotional patterns were too complex. Their reactions did not follow logic. Yet, at the same time, everything humans did felt meaningful in a way the aliens couldn't fully understand. That morning, the ship landed near a busy part of a larger city. The area was filled with streets, buildings, shops, and people rushing everywhere. The aliens stepped out slowly, expecting chaos or panic at their sudden arrival. But the humans in the area barely reacted at first. Some looked surprised, some curious, but almost all continued what they were doing while keeping an eye on the visitors. The delegation walked slowly through the city, letting the translator drone float beside them. Cars honked, people called out to each other, street vendors shouted about their goods, and music played from open shop windows. The sound was overwhelming at first. No other planet the delegation had visited was this loud. On most worlds, noise was controlled for comfort and safety. But humans seemed to thrive in it. They moved through noise the way other species moved through silence. The aliens passed by a bakery, where warm air drifted out, carrying a smell none of them had experienced before. A human from inside noticed them staring and came out with a friendly smile. They held up a tray of freshly baked bread and offered it. The aliens hesitated. On some worlds, accepting food was a deep cultural commitment. But the human didn't push, just held it out patiently. The delegation accepted a piece. The human seemed happy just to share something simple, something ordinary from their world. As the aliens continued walking, they reached a large crossing where hundreds of people moved at once when the lights changed. The delegation stood between them, surrounded by bodies moving in all directions. Humans brushed past each other, stepped around each other, and dodged each other with an ease that amazed the aliens. The movement looked chaotic, but it was a kind of organized chaos. Humans seemed to trust that everyone would move correctly. Somehow, they rarely collided. When they reached the other side, the aliens noticed something new. A group of humans stood near a bench, arguing about something not angrily, but with passion. Their voices were loud, their hands moved as they spoke, their expressions changed quickly. The aliens scanned the group. Their heart rates were normal. They weren't angry, they were simply expressing their ideas. Within minutes, the group ended the argument with light laughter and a few casual gestures of friendship. Before going their separate ways, the delegation wrote this down carefully. Humans didn't avoid conflict. They faced it, expressed it, and moved on. They didn't let disagreement break relationships. That was rare in the galaxy. Most species avoided arguments or saw them as dangerous. Humans treated them as part of life. As the aliens continued walking, they soon noticed a large gathering near a small plaza. A crowd had formed around a street musician playing an instrument. The music was soft, rhythmic, and filled with emotion. Humans stood still, listening quietly. Some smiled. Others closed their eyes. A few dropped coins into a small container in front of the musician. The aliens scanned the scene with interest. Music existed on other worlds, but it had specific functions, rituals, communication, coordination. For humans, music seemed to serve something deeper. It stirred feelings and memories. It connected people. Even strangers shared a silent moment of unity through sound. The musician noticed the aliens watching and played a few notes toward them. as if greeting them through music. The aliens felt something strange, a warmth, a sense of peace. They didn't understand why. The translator identified it as an emotional response, something humans experienced through art. This moment stayed in the aliens' minds as they walked away. A short while later, the delegation decided to visit a busy marketplace filled with stalls selling clothes, food, tools, toys, and handmade items. Humans called out to customers, explaining their products, negotiating prices, and joking with one another. The atmosphere was lively and colorful. Items hung from strings, displayed on shelves, or laid out on cloths spread across the ground. The delegation moved from stall to stall, observing the creativity of human designs. Some items were practical. Others were artistic. Some were simply decorative with no purpose but beauty. The aliens had never seen a species put this much effort into objects that weren't necessary for survival. It showed a depth of imagination that surprised them. At one stall, a human handed the aliens a small carved figure as a gift. The detail in the carving amazed them. It was shaped like a small animal, crafted with care. The human said something that the translator interpreted as, "Welcome to our world." The aliens held the carving gently. It felt like more than a gift. It felt like a connection not further ahead. The aliens encountered a different scene, one that would teach them something important. A vehicle had broken down in the middle of the road, causing a small traffic jam. Instead of getting angry or shouting, several humans got out of their vehicles and helped push the broken car to the side. Others directed the flow of traffic. No one demanded payment. No one asked for recognition. They simply helped because it needed to be done. The delegation stood in silence, astonished. On most other worlds, responsibility would fall only on designated workers or machines. Ordinary citizens rarely stepped forward. But humans acted on instinct. As they moved on, they entered an area where tall buildings blocked the sunlight. People sat on benches, some eating lunch, some talking quietly. A few looked tired, their faces showing stress from work or life. Humans wore their struggles openly, but even then, they pushed forward. One worker sat alone, staring at the ground as if thinking deeply. A stranger walking by noticed this and stopped to ask if they were okay. The worker smiled weakly and nodded. The stranger placed a hand on their shoulder briefly, offering comfort without needing to know the full story. Then they walked away. The aliens recorded another note. Humans recognized emotional pain even without words, and they comforted each other without expecting anything in return. This level of empathy was rare in the galaxy. Later in the afternoon, the delegation visited a hospital at the suggestion of the humans. They wanted the aliens to understand how healing worked on Earth. Inside, the aliens saw humans caring for the sick and injured with patience and skill. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, moving quickly yet gently. Families sat beside patients, supporting them through fear and uncertainty. The aliens had seen medical facilities on many worlds, but human care felt personal. It wasn't just science. It was compassion. In one room, a child was afraid of a medical device. A nurse knelt beside them, speaking softly, making the device seem like something harmless. The child slowly relaxed. The aliens watched closely. This simple interaction taught them more about humans than 1,000 scans could. As the delegation left the hospital, they passed by a park where humans exercised. Some ran, some practiced calming movements, and some simply stretched. Humans took care of their bodies not because they were strong, but because they wanted to stay healthy. Their determination to improve themselves, even in small ways, impressed the aliens. Near sunset, the delegation climbed a hill overlooking the city. The lights of the buildings began to glow, creating a view that looked like a sea of stars on the ground. Humans gathered there too, taking photos, relaxing after a long day. or enjoying the peaceful moment, the aliens stood among them silently, feeling something shift inside them. They had come expecting a predictable species, something easy to categorize. Instead, they found a species that lived with passion, intensity, and endless complexity. Humans confused them, surprised them, amazed them. And somehow, the aliens felt something they had never felt on any other world, respect growing inside them. As night settled, the delegation returned to their ship with a single realization repeating in their minds. Humans were not strong because of their bodies. They were strong because of their minds, their hearts, and their ability to rise every time they fell. And this strength might be what made them one of the galaxy's most remarkable species. The delegation sat inside their quiet chamber, a room filled with soft lights and floating screens, all showing pieces of their time on Earth. They had watched humans laugh, argue, work, survive storms, and rebuild broken things with their own hands. They had seen kindness, fear, hope, and stubborn strength. Now they had to turn all of that into a formal report for the coalition that sent them. But none of them knew where to begin. For the first time since leaving their home worlds, they found themselves unsure of their own knowledge. Back when they first detected the strange signals coming from the small blue planet, they thought the species living there would be simple, maybe even predictable. But nothing about humans was predictable. Every new day on Earth showed them something different, something confusing, but also strangely impressive. One member of the group sat staring at a screen that played a moment from their visit to a coastal town. A huge wave had struck the shore, surprising everyone. But instead of panicking, humans rushed toward the danger, pulling strangers to safety, forming human chains, and shouting directions to each other. No one waited for orders. No one asked who was responsible. They simply acted. The observer remembered turning to another delegate and asking how such a fragile species had survived this long if they kept throwing themselves into risk. The answer came slowly over time. Humans did not survive because they avoided danger. They survived because they faced it together, again and again, even when it hurt. Another delegate replayed footage of humans laughing at the landing craft on the first day. Instead of fear, the humans showed curiosity and excitement, waving their recording devices, making jokes, and asking the aliens if they liked pizza. It was easy to misunderstand that reaction at first. They assumed humans were unaware of danger. But after deeper study, they realized humans acted this way because they refused to let fear control their lives. The whole team gathered around a round table as the screens dimmed one by one. They had seen enough to know their first analysis was completely wrong. Humans were not weak. They were not unimportant. They did not fit into any category the coalition used for evaluating other species. A calm voice from the group finally broke the silence. The speaker said that they needed to rewrite the entire report, not just update a few lines. Another member agreed, saying their early assumptions were based only on physical appearance. Many advanced species in the galaxy had strong bodies, tough skin, or powerful instincts. But humans were different. Their strength was something deeper, something invisible. Someone said that humans were unpredictable in ways that scared them a little. They could change plans in a split second. They could build something new from scrap metal. They could turn a small idea into a massive invention. And even when humans failed, they tried again, adjusting each time until they made progress. Another delegate added that humans had a strange inner fire, a drive that made them push forward even when things were uncertain or painful. They had seen humans struggling through tough training, rebuilding towns after disasters, and supporting each other in moments of sadness. Even when humans cried, they found a reason to stand up again. While discussing these moments, they realized the coalition might not believe them at first. The coalition was used to species that followed patterns. Humans did not. They could be peaceful and helpful, yet fiercely protective when someone threatened their home or loved ones. They could be joyful and humorous, yet serious and determined when facing challenges. Their mix of emotions made them hard to classify using the standard system. The delegation decided the final report must explain that humans were not dangerous because of their weapons or technology. They were dangerous because of their spirit. A species that refused to give up was more powerful than one with any physical advantage. As they worked on the report, they described humans as adaptable beyond reason. Give a human a tool, and they would find 5 new uses for it. Give them an empty land, and they would build towns. Give them a problem, and they would create solutions. Even when things looked impossible, humans kept trying until something changed. One delegate recalled watching humans explain their own history. They had faced endless challenges: harsh weather, diseases, conflicts, and failures. Yet they kept improving. Their ability to learn and grow made them unpredictable in the best and worst ways. The report also had to mention the human ability to form bonds quickly. They made friends easily, cared deeply, and stood up for those they loved. The delegation had seen a human offer them food, even though the human didn't know if the aliens could eat it. They saw a family invite one member of the group into their home simply because they wanted to show kindness. Actions like that were not common in most advanced species. It was not logical, yet it was powerful. One member of the group wrote in the report that humans were able to connect emotionally with strangers, animals, and even stories. This emotional depth helped them survive thousands of years of difficulty. It gave them the motivation to keep going when everything else seemed hopeless. Another delegate pointed out something small but important. Humans laughed a lot. They laughed when things were good, but they also laughed when things were stressful or confusing. It was a coping mechanism, but also a way of bonding with others. The aliens had never seen anything like it. The more they wrote, the more they realized the coalition needed to prepare for humanity's future. Humans would not stay on their planet forever. Their curiosity was too strong. Their desire to understand new worlds was too natural. One day they would leave Earth and travel far beyond their home star. The delegation debated for hours on how to phrase this. They did not want the coalition to fear humans. They wanted them to respect humans. There was a difference. Humans were not a threat unless someone threatened them first. They were capable of great patience, but also great force when defending their own. One observer stated that humans' true power was not their bodies, but their minds. Their creativity was unmatched. They could turn stones into tools, steam into engines, electricity into communication, and dreams into inventions. A species like that could change the galaxy, slowly at first, then suddenly as the report neared completion. They added one final section that many of them felt strongly about. They wrote that the idea of calling humans fragile was misleading. Yes, humans could be injured easily. Yes, their bodies were soft compared to many other species. But their resilience made them one of the strongest species they had studied. Their ability to recover, rebuild, heal, and adapt was unmatched. The delegation decided to end the report with a simple statement. Humanity was not what anyone expected. They were not the strongest physically, nor the oldest, nor the most technologically advanced. But they had a level of determination that made them formidable in a way that could not be measured by normal systems. Once the report was finished, the delegation reviewed it together. Each member added small corrections, making sure every detail was honest and clear. They wanted the coalition to understand what they had seen, not just read words on a screen. Finally, when they were satisfied, they transferred the report to the communication system. The document carried their full observations, their mistakes, their new understanding, and their warnings. They knew the coalition would take it seriously, even if it challenged old ideas. as they prepared to leave Earth. The delegation looked out at the planet one last time. The blue oceans, bright cities, winding roads, and countless human homes filled the view. It was a planet filled with noise, energy, and emotion. A planet that refused to break no matter what happened to it. The leader of the delegation whispered a quiet thought to the others. Humans were not perfect. They made mistakes. They argued. They sometimes struggled to understand themselves. But that was what made them interesting. Their imperfections pushed them to grow, and their growth made them unpredictable as the ship rose above the clouds. The delegation knew they had witnessed something rare. They had met a species that defied expectations. A species that could someday surprise the entire galaxy. And as the blue planet slowly shrank behind them, they realized the coalition would soon see what they already knew. Humanity was not the strongest, not the fastest, not the toughest, but they were something far more powerful. They were relentless. The coalition received the delegation's report many days after the ship had already left Earth's orbit. The document was long, detailed, and filled with observations that none of the coalition members expected. They had sent the team to investigate a new species, assuming they would return with a familiar kind of classification, harmless, primitive, or possibly developing. But the message they received was unlike any report they had seen before. As the leaders of different worlds gathered inside a massive circular chamber, they activated the shared display system. The delegation's report lit up the room with scenes of Earth, clips of humans running to help each other, building things with simple tools, laughing during strange situations, and stepping forward when danger appeared. The coalition had expected fear, confusion, or chaos. Instead, they saw determination, courage, and a level of hopefulness that did not fit into their usual categories. One of the senior council members leaned closer to the screen. As the footage showed humans standing near the alien craft on the very first day, instead of hiding, the humans pointed recording devices at the delegation, waved their hands, and even asked questions like curious children meeting visitors at a playground. This alone was enough to confuse the council. Most species in the galaxy would have run away or tried to attack something unfamiliar. But humans approached first calmly, boldly, almost excitedly. The council murmured among themselves. How could such a species grow and survive with such reckless confidence? How could they be so fragile and yet so fearless? More footage played, showing humans during storms, during power failures, during moments when everything seemed to fall apart. In each moment, the humans worked together. Some used their hands to clear paths, some offered comfort to strangers, and some simply stayed by each other's side until help arrived. The council could not ignore these patterns. It became clear that humans had a kind of unity that came from emotion rather than logic. A representative from one of the older civilizations paused the recording and asked the room what this meant for the future of the galaxy. If humans ever reached deep space, would they bring this same mix of strength and unpredictability? Would they spread their stubborn hope to other worlds? Would they become protectors or disruptors? Nobody had an answer at first. Meanwhile, back on the delegation's ship, as it traveled away from Earth, the group watched the report being transmitted through space. They felt a strange mix of relief and responsibility. They had not just sent information. They had shared their personal experience, their mistakes, their surprise, and their deep respect for humanity. They hoped the coalition would understand what they had seen with their own eyes. The ship glided quietly through the star-filled darkness, while the delegation discussed Earth's possible future. They all agreed that humans were not ready for deep space travel yet, at least not on a large scale. Their technology was growing fast, but they still had much to learn. But even in their current state, humans already had something that the galaxy respected more than technology. They had endurance. One member of the group said that humans reminded them of small flames that refused to be put out. Even when the wind blew strong, the flame only bent for a moment before rising again. Another said that humans had a rare ability to turn difficulty into motivation. When life knocked them down, they got up with more strength than before. The others nodded. They had all seen this quality again and again. Far away in the coalition chamber, the council returned to reading the final section of the report. This part was written in a softer tone, almost emotional, something unusual for a formal document. The delegation described the feeling of leaving Earth. They wrote about how they had looked down at the planet and seen not just land and water, but the home of a species that never stopped trying. They described the light in human eyes when they talked about their dreams. They described how humans carried sadness, but still found reasons to smile. The council did not expect such words. Reports were usually cold, logical, and measured. But this one carried warmth. It carried truth. One council member asked if the delegation had perhaps grown too attached to the planet they were studying. Another suggested that emotional observation could cloud judgment. But as they continued reading, it became clear that the delegation had reported everything with careful honesty. They had explained both the strengths and the flaws of humans. The report mentioned that humans could be unpredictable, sometimes emotional in ways that caused problems. They could argue over small things, act impulsively, or refuse to compromise. But the delegation made one thing clear. These flaws were part of the same force that made humans strong. Their emotions drove them to protect, to create, to stand together. Without these emotions, they might not survive at all. This was something the coalition had never seen before. A species whose greatest strength and biggest weakness came from the same source. After hours of discussion, the council placed their final vote. They agreed to classify humans not as a threat and not as a primitive species, but as a high-potential civilization. This meant more observation, more study, and more caution. They would not interfere with Earth, nor would they try to control it. Instead, they would wait quietly and respectfully to see what humans chose to become. The decision sent a wave of quiet curiosity through the coalition. Everyone wanted to know more about this strange species. Some worlds requested more information about human culture, and some asked about their technology. Others wanted to understand human emotions, which seemed unpredictable but powerful. Back on the ship, the delegation received the coalition's response. They felt relieved. They had done their job well. They knew the coalition needed time to fully understand humanity. Humans were complicated. They laughed when they should be scared. They cried when they felt joy. They pushed forward when they were tired. They helped others even when they were suffering themselves. The she